Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We've got some trying times ahead of us. Thank you all for joining me. I'm going to get straight into the content. This is more a presentation than a webinar. A webinar normally has some interactivity to it. But given the times we're in and given the number of people we have joining us today, I wanted to get straight into what's in the front of mind of everybody. And that is, how do we survive the corona economy? Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and he was absolutely right. But for one thing, this man, not so long after that, in fact, it was about 48 fights after Mike Tyson, landed up as a filler, not even as the real deal, having to fight Mike Tyson while Evander Holyfield's ear was repairing from their previous bout, in which point in time Mike Tyson took a chunk out of it. Nevertheless, this chap stood up. He really had a very moderate record. He got knocked out by Mike Tyson in the 8th round. I think it was one of the longest fights that Mike Tyson had endured. And he stood up, and in the 10th round, he knocked Mike Tyson out. And it was Mike Tyson's first defeat. And the point that I'm making is that, yes, everyone has a plan until you're punched in the face. But a winner gets up and carries on fighting. I think as business owners in South Africa, given what we've endured in the last 5, 6, 7 years of a regressive economy, compounded by the really poor, unsteady, unreliable supply of Eskom, it really must feel that we ride at the very end of our tethers in many cases. And for those of us who don't, it just simply indicates how resilient we've become, and in fact, how second nature it is for us. So the final blow, well, hopefully not the final blow, but a new blow, the COVID economy, now leading to a shutdown for the next 3 weeks, has placed us in a very vulnerable position as SMEs. These two factors, the regressive economy and Eskom, have over the years also thinned out our margins, but more importantly, thinned out our reserves. And reserves are critical in a business because it allows you to withstand an unexpected shock. So thin reserves, the unexpected shock, we've got to start boxing smart. This is the third of a number of webinars that I've had. The first is a generalized corona battle plan. If you haven't had the opportunity to see it, I really suggest that you do. It talks about how you manage yourself and, more importantly, 5 tactics that you should be deploying right now in your business to safeguard it with the objective of being the last man standing. Those of us who get to the other side of the corona economy will get to the other side, trust me, stronger, tougher, more resilient, but more importantly, with a lot less competition. And when the demand floods back into the market, in order to get the economy going again, I think you're going to find yourselves far busier than anticipated. If you use the time smartly in the next 3 weeks to gear up for that, and that's what I referred to in the Corona Battle Plan webinar that's on the site as well. If you use that time smartly, you will be able to create some level of scale so that you can take on all the business that you need to make up for the last month, month and a half of no revenues. My name is Pavlo, and I run a business called Auric. Auric is a business that's completely orientated around, let's call it, mostly the 10 to 150 million rand a year privately owned business, whether it be individuals, partners, or families. We work very closely with that segment in order to help them get to the next level of growth and value. So why do we do what we do? And it's always important to remind ourselves, when you get smacked in the face and you're lying down on that ground, wondering whether you should get up for the 10 count, you need to be clear. You need to be crystal clear on why you do what you do. And you see there are a number of reasons for this. In the Kabbalah, which is an ancient Jewish mystical text, it speaks about where energy comes from. And it uses the analogy of a tree. A tree grows, no matter what size it is, from the very, very smallest, highest leaf, which stretches into the sunlight and photosynthesizes at an incredible pace. And a tree moves into the future. It moves into the empty space. If we are clear why we do what we do, and that goes beyond just simply making money to put food on the table, that's where you will be drawing your energy from in the next 3 weeks. And trust me, it's going to be a tough, tough time. None of us have lived in isolation. And as business people, we're constantly engaging with each other. So think hard about why you do what you do. I believe there's only one thing that you should be thinking about in relation to your business. And that is you do what you do to build an asset of value. Briefly, that's a business that is well positioned in the market. I talk about a brand and I talk about positioning a lot. Effectively, what it means is that you're very clear around who you serve, what problem you solve for them, and how you do it in a manner that they experience value from you. Very often, when I speak to business owners and I say, who do you serve? Literally, the real answer at the end of the day is anyone and everyone. This is not a time to do that. This is a time to be very clear that you want to specialize in solving problems for very well-defined groups of customers who are similar in their problem statements. If you get that right and you develop speciality in it, that's effectively what over time builds your brand. The next thing is it's a business that's built on systems, activities in a sequence that can be measured, and it should flow throughout your business. In the next 3 weeks, it's a really good time to understand what your marketing system looks like. The only thing that marketing should measure for you are leads generated. In other words, customers and clients that you're well suited to serve that know of you, come to you and knock on your door or bang on your website. Sales. Sales is simply a lead conversion system. Activities in a sequence that should measure up to say of all the inquiries that came in, how many did I convert? And you constantly look to see how you can be more effective in your conversion. Operations is purely about fulfillment. How do I fulfill the promises I've made to my clients? And again, that is a series of systems, activities in a sequence that can be measured. Because if you understand how to deliver your operations through systems, you know immediately where you can start looking to enhance the experience, improve efficiencies, and reduce your cost of doing business. When you have those elements right, you then have your team. And in truth, your team's job is simple. If I built my systems to deliver my brand positioning in the marketplace, then I'm looking to find good operators to run the systems for me. Because you as the business owner need to find yourself in a position where you're spending at least 60% of your time focused on what I refer to as your next level of growth and the next level of value. If you're driven to build an asset of value, that's where you should be spending the majority of your time, because it's only you who knows your business as well as you do and who can make the final decisions to take the risks that are needed to grow. After that, you need to be locked and loaded with funding. Because if you're going to grow beyond, let's call it generic growth or ordinary growth, you need to be able to get oxygen into the athlete so it can run faster than the rate you were running before. And finally, an asset of value is a business that of a day can be sold. And the reason it's so important for us as business owners is because we throw everything we have into that business. And we expect that we're going to get a payday. Yet 94.6% of businesses globally fail to sell. It's critical to build it into a saleable asset for the simple reason it's where your legacy, pension, if I may, and ultimately the life you will have after your business lies. So let's get very clear on that. This is what we are fighting for, given the circumstances we face today. And post the corona economy, this is what we should be fighting for. When do you go for help? When you're under fire and you're uncertain about your survival. That's right now. You also go for help when you constantly keep on winning. Because very often, I sent out a message to my entire team yesterday. I said, I'm deeply, deeply worried. And I left it at that. And someone responded and said, why? And I said, because I feel uncomfortably cheerful. When things are going well, you should reach out for help because you're not seeing what's coming down the pipe. When things are rough, that's when you have to reach out for very different kinds of help. In this instance over here, we're going to be talking about a very difficult place to go for help, and yet a fundamental place to go for help in a time of crisis. And that's SARS, our taxman. In negotiating with the taxman, you've got three ways to do this. Or rather, in looking at how you can use tax to help you survive the next 3 months. And some of us are in very, very dire positions with our businesses. If you're in the eventing industry or the social economy, whether it be restaurants, whether it be hotels, whether it be hospitality, whether it be tourism, you're under significantly more pressure than you would be, for example, if you're in the pharmaceutical healthcare industry right now. So understand where your risks are and what kind of risks you face in your sector, in your industry. And that then allows you to start setting the approach you want to take, specifically with regard to this webinar and how you would engage with SARS. There are three ways to do it. The first thing you can negotiate is what's called a deferred arrangement, and I'll get into the detail on each of these options. The second is a compromised arrangement. Compromised arrangements are a lot harder. Deferred arrangements are where you want to actually pause or ask for a discount in the taxes you need to pay in the month of measure with the view to make up for it once we are through this economy. A compromised arrangement is where you're asking specifically for a write-off on tax. And that's governed by a very detailed act called the Tax Administration Act, Section 200. Before you go down that road, it's really important you understand the terms and conditions around how compromised arrangements work. The third option is to take your chances. I don't recommend that. You will get bust. And if it's not now, it'll happen later. There is an enormous effort being made in SARS, specifically centering around new technologies that have been brought in, artificial intelligence that's been invested in, to understand who, how, and where people behave. And people who are non-compliant will be earmarked. If you're building an asset of value, you need to work with SARS, not against them. Because in an asset of value, you are looking for the medium to long term. Okay, so let's talk about what we can negotiate. First and foremost, and I'm only going to focus on two of the most significant cash flow impacting aspects of your tax. That is VAT, value added tax, and PAYE, pay as you earn. We'll start with VAT. In the first instance, our VAT laws are quite tough on us as businesses. We practice what's called an accrual VAT system. And what it means is that when I serve you with a service or a product, I invoice you in order for you to pay me. In that month that I invoice you, my VAT output is calculated. If you don't pay me in the same month, my VAT input is then not calculated. And I have a shortfall on cash flow for a period of time until you do pay me. I've been arguing with SARS for years now that for SMEs, especially businesses doing, let's say, less than 50 million a year, we should be subject at least to a cash-based VAT system. Not that easy to implement, hard ask, I know that, but critical if you really want to get the economy from an SME point of view vibrant. Right now, we don't have it. You need to have evidence of outstanding invoices. And I'm going to give you an example. So if you've got VAT, if you're looking at getting VAT back, or if you're looking for deferred arrangements on your VAT, you need to have evidence of outstanding invoices. If you do, what you negotiate with SARS is a deferred payment on the output tax with SARS, because that then reduces your cash input and output, offering you a temporary buffer. Let me give you a worked example. Bear with me. So let's say I invoice a client for 115,000 Rand, and it includes that. It means that I provided products or services of 100,000 Rand to that client or customer. The 15,000 Rand is my VAT output. In delivering the service or products, I've got VATable inputs. In other words, all the activities involved besides staff, etc., that are used in the production of the income carry VAT alongside with them too. When you pay your landlord, you pay VAT. When you pay your stationery, you pay VAT. Those are your inputs. Typically, what I would do is when I'm paid from my client, I would offset my VAT input with my VAT output, and I would pay the difference to SARS. But here's the thing. If you're supplying big businesses, or government for that matter, and I supplied you in the month of March, well, I've invoiced you already. And in the month of March, that invoice carries my VAT output. The likelihood of me being paid, however, in the month of March is probably low, given the nature of the clients that I mentioned, big corporates, big businesses, and government. If you get paid 30 days later, 60 days later, 90 days later, depending on what sector you're in, you might well be lucky. It means for that period of time, in the month of May, where we are going to be under the most pressure as SMEs, we do not have the output to the input in order to minimize the cash flow aspect of the VAT itself. It's in those cases, I would suggest that you approach SARS in order to look for a deferment on your VAT calculation. PAYE is another example. Your people are your business, and all salaries attract PAYE. In the instance that you pay your salaries, which hopefully you do, in that case, you are going to be looking for a deferment on PAYE. Now, the COVID-19 implications already identified by SARS have suggested that they would, for certain businesses above certain sizes and below certain sizes, offer a 20% deferment on PAYE. I have attached to the letter that I will be offering you on the back of this what those provisions are, who it applies to. But you do need to visit the SARS website to better understand it. Let me give you an example of how this works. So let's say you have an employee with a gross salary of 35,000 Rand. Of that, the net salary that gets paid to that employee is 27,960 odd Rand, 27,960 Rand. PAYE makes up 6,890 Rand, and UIF is about 150 Rand. There are a few roundings over here, but more or less. To keep your employee, if you've negotiated with them and they're on board, you're paying them the 27,960 Rand. In this instance, prior to negotiating with SARS, first reviewed the COVID-19 relaxations that SARS is offering, but your approach to SARS on a deferment would be for that portion of 6,890 Rand. Depending on the number of employees you have and depending on what types of employees they are, that number can be fairly significant in any one month. In a month where you're earning no revenue because of the shutdown and lockdown, and you've taken a strategic view that the most important thing for you to build and succeed in building an asset of value is over this period to hold on to your staff, then in those cases, certainly approach SARS and discuss the deferment on your PAYE. Let's pause there for a little bit. If you lose your team, once we get to the other side of the lockdown or shutdown, how do you start the engines of your business again? If the strategy that you're deploying is one that says, I need to get to the other side of this, because on the other side of this, if I have succeeded in coming up alive, and in fact, coming up geared for growth, I'm going to lap up the opportunities offered, because as last man standing, with some of my competitors who have faded away, I will fill up the capacity. I will be talking next week around how you negotiate with staff. A lot of us in business have turned around and said, well, perhaps I can't afford a 5-day week for this month. Perhaps it ought to be a 3-day week. That's issue one. But beyond that, in its own right, what are you going to be doing with your staff over the next 3 weeks? Because with isolation, you certainly won't be working face-to-face or close by. but you've got different layers of staff, and the way you work with them through digitized engagements will lend itself to future opportunities that you have not yet imagined. Think about it carefully. We will be talking about that next week. So you've got two things to negotiate with SARS. You've got your VAT, you've got your PAYE. You need to run your own independent numbers and understand what cash shortfall you believe you will have because of the lockdown, and only approach SARS after you have been through all your suppliers. The previous webinar was about how you negotiate with the landlord. You should expect them to come to the party, and I gave reasons why. On the resource site that I'll send you to after this, the entire briefing, the entire webinar is recorded there, plus the letter to the landlord. And in fact, since Tuesday, when we did that webinar, I've had 6 people come back to me on LinkedIn to say, hey, guess what? We sent the letter, we adjusted it obviously for our circumstances, and the doors have been opened and we're currently negotiating. So guys, if you don't make the move, it's not going to come to you. You've got to take the initiative, be bold, work through all your suppliers, see how they can support you to get to the other side, because your survival, your ability to grow is equally in their interests. And thereafter, you go to SARS as the last resort. When you go there, you need to prepare. What is your framework? This means running your numbers. You need to be clear what your 3-month cash flow looks like and what your 12-month cash flow looks like. The reason I say a 3-month cash flow is because I truly believe the impact of this 3-week shutdown is going to be felt for 3 months from Thursday, tomorrow, this evening, in fact, onward. I don't think that we're necessarily going to bounce back immediately. People have become extremely apprehensive, and over the 3-week period, you can expect people to get very, very nervous. Why? Because a lot of people who don't create a discipline around how they run their lives on a day-to-day basis outside of the work environment will certainly sit down in front of their phones or sit down in front of their computers to do work. But you tell me how many of them are going to land up going down rabbit holes and looking at social media and looking at YouTube. And the moment you start doing that, you start to see all the negative news that's going to be thrown at you. And when you read that, and when that makes up your day on a day-to-day basis, you're going to get very depressed in that period, and you will emerge depressed for some time. I think that we have a 3-month period that we need to batten down the hatches for. So the deals that you do with anyone you're negotiating with, specifically landlords and especially SARS, must look at a 3-month cash flow. Don't be aggressive on the revenues you expect to come back, but with a 12-month view. When you prepare like that, what it says is that the 3-month period of pressure is what I want to negotiate deferments on, but here's my 12-month view to demonstrate how I can make up for those discounts you've given me in effect for these 3 months and pay it back to you over the remaining 9 months of my forecast. You need to be very clear about what's in it for me, and you have to talk to assets of value. SARS will want to see that you are focused on getting your business to the other side of this and building it. In the 12-month view that you offer, that will be how you demonstrate it when you argue why you think the revenues will do what they do over the next 12 months. You need to be cognizant of what's in it for them. I will talk to that in a later slide. Empathy in any negotiation is important. You can either practice it positively or use it and behave negatively. And when I talk about how you do the negotiation, I'll share what that means too. You have to be sure you're compliant. Can I tell you, when a customer comes to me and says, I need some help, and yet already they're in 90 days, 120 days, compared to the customer who's always paid on time and has always been compliant with regard to the contract that we have between each other, who are you going to visit to first? It's the same thing with landlords. If you're behind in rents, your bona fides, in other words, your good faith in coming into the negotiation, is already on a back foot. The next thing is you need to meet. I will send you a draft letter that you can use in order to set up that meeting, and it'll tell you who you need to meet, how you reach them, and who your relevant branch authority is. But you need to meet and try and meet face to face. And by that, I mean through a screen or over the phone in this economy. It's important to go beyond email. You must have a conversation, because when you meet with someone, yes, they're a representative of SARS, but here's the thing, they're also human beings. And for the first time ever in the history of this country, every single person will be united by this crisis. The lived reality of home life for all of us is going to have more similarities now in the next 3 weeks than it's ever had before. When you meet with people, be sure to use emotion to connect with the human being behind that SARS badge or the landlord badge or the bank badge for that matter. Send the email ahead, be sure to meet and greet. Use Zoom, use Skype, use phone, but you must speak to the person and put a name and a face and a human being to that person when you do. Finally, from there, present your case, be well prepared, but you must conclude a deal. It's important that the deal you're looking for might not be the deal you get. A deal means that perhaps even a compromise has been found. Emerge from there with something, because effectively what you're looking for, you've called for help and you're looking for additional resources to come on board. What makes a taxman tick? So let's just demonstrate some empathy here for a minute. And by no means do I work for SARS. The first thing they want is sustainable revenues. Given what's happened to the South African Revenue Services in the last 5 years, until about a year ago or so, when a new commissioner was found, it was ravaged. The place was shredded and torn to pieces. Their systems were broken left, right, and center. They've done an enormous amount of work in order to build the underlying systems again so they can improve the quality of service. And let's be honest, we've seen it. VAT refunds have happened with far more efficacy and efficiency in this last year than they certainly had in the 5 years prior to that. What SARS wants is consistent, sustainable revenues, because they too have targets to meet. The next thing they want is compliance. The cost of chasing after non-compliant people and dealing with non-compliant companies is huge. It's a cost to them. And who of us wants to constantly chase our debtors? They want process efficiency. In the way that I've written up the draft letter for you to negotiate a meeting with SARS, I've asked you to put in a tremendous amount of detail there, and very specific detail, in relation both to the back deferment and or the PAYE deferment you're looking for. Arm your engagement with proper information, because there is no time in a time of crisis for you to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You need to go in there well engaged, well thought through, a proper framework in place, your numbers on hand, and ready to do a deal. They too are inundated at the moment. And through that, if one engagement can lead to the outcome of a deal done, then everybody's won. Do your homework. Don't go in there, and when you ask the question, well, what are the COVID-19 concessions we as SARS have made? And you say, I don't know. That's no different to you coming to negotiate with me, having demonstrated no understanding of my experience, my lived reality, and my circumstances. It's not a good way to begin any negotiation. Read them, understand them, apply them, and when you negotiate, do so having done that work. The next thing is understand your business and numbers, and then very definitely from there, you must have evidence that you're implementing your battle plan. Show them that you've negotiated with staff. Show them you've negotiated with other suppliers. Show them what you're doing over the next 3 weeks in order to keep your team together, in order to build new capacity around sales opportunities that will emerge post the COVID-19 period, and let them see that reflected in the 12-month view. If they make a deferment for you and they concede to a deferment for you and negotiate one with you, they want to see how, if I defer your VAT for 3 months, for example, by X%, how will you pay it back in the remaining 9 months of this fiscal year? So let's talk about negotiation. Heart and head. Everybody is feeling emotional. Many people go through the period of the emotions differently. Some people take longer to get to a place of fear or to realize what the implications of this is. Some people get to positive dispositions far faster than others. It's very, very individual. It's important, however, to connect with feelings first. Be sure that you are speaking to a person, and be sure that you demonstrate an empathy for them. It's kind of like human engagement 101. It's Dale Carnegie, How to Make Friends and Influence People. In fact, that would be a very, very good read over the next 3 weeks. So it's an emotional time. Let your feelings be used to connect with the SARS representative. Their personal lives are very similar to yours. If you meet someone, for example, let's say you are 40-something, and let's say you happen to have a partner, and let's say you happen to have a family. The likelihood of you meeting someone 40-something on the other side who might have very similar circumstances is quite high. What do you think their lives are at home? They're going to be working during this period, but also they're going to have kids at home going mad. They're going to have to do their own housekeeping. They're going to have to do their own cooking, and they've got to hold down full-time jobs and very pressurized jobs at the moment. And that should sound familiar to all of us. Understand this. It's unlikely to be different for any of them. So connect with people emotionally first. And from there, prepare your rational argument. If you're compliant walking in, and you walk in and you show attached to your letter your tax certificate, your tax clearance certificate, immediately that indicates you're a compliant taxpayer. It warms the cockles of their intellectual minds to find a way to help you get to the other side of the problem you're now facing. They know as much as you know that this came from nowhere. They also know it's impacting every single business. But be honest with them. If you are well received, don't be opportunistic in how you negotiate. Negotiate what you need to negotiate. Do so for a 3-month period of uncertainty, but don't try and stretch it to 6 months, 12 months, 9 months, whatever the case might be. If you get a deferment of 50%, don't push it to 60, 70, 80%. Be clear around what you need, why you need it, and you should be able to demonstrate it rationally. Because if you have heart on your side, mind favors that argument. Be creative. There will be many solutions. The one that you've gone in with might not be the one you come out with. In fact, they're probably more experienced in this than you will ever be. So if you strike a good relationship, if you demonstrate your bona fides, maybe they might well come up with something better than what you went in with. Be objective driven. Remember why you're doing this. You're doing this to get to the asset of value. You must emphasize that and repeat it again and again and again in the conversation. They need to see that you're a long-term player, because remember, one of the things that they want is a future, sustainable, viable customer. And then remember, you get measured by your behavior. Any commitments that are made here, if you're going to get back to somebody with certain information, be sure that that information is accurate, that it's well thought through, and be sure that you get back to them on time. Remember, you one business knocking on their door, and you're one of probably 10,000, 20,000 businesses knocking on their door at the moment. You need to be a bit more patient with them than you would want them to be with you. And that's just the way it is at the moment. It's not personal, guys. At the end of the cycle, your survival will make you one of the last businesses standing. That ocean that you see over there, we are all sailing in it globally right now. If you imagine your business to be a ship, and everyone's ship is different, of course, but the only thing that's common with all of them, we're sailing in the same ocean. And it's stormy, and it's rough, and it's difficult. But this is the time where, through how you behave and how you prepare for every engagement, especially the tough engagements where you're looking to negotiate free cash into your business, to get you beyond 3 months, the way you behave now is the way that you build your brand, your reputation. You will see things that you never thought were possible in your business. When you run those numbers, you will learn about the scary organism called SARS, because I believe you're going to be well received if you're well prepared. So we're in your corner. I'm in your corner. The reason I do this is because it's the only thing I care about. I personally believe, and I really do hope that someone from SARS is on this webinar, and it's probably quite likely. I really do believe that we, the SMEs, are the genuine investors in any economy. Big corporates very often have shareholders. Shareholders means that those big corporates are funded with other people's money. How many of us are funded with other people's money? Very, very, very few of us. The mid-size SME is without a doubt the deepest committer to any economy in any society. That mid-sized business doing around 10 million a year up to about 150, 200 million a year. If you look at the stats, it's where the jobs get generated. It's where the fastest rate of taxes are paid. So not in value, but in volume and velocity. And it's where most innovation takes place. And innovation makes an economy bigger by definition. So I'm in your corner. From an Auric point of view, we're in your corner. It's what we are built to serve. It's the only thing we care about. And in this time of trouble, the benefit we can bring to you is we've worked with over 2,500 businesses in South Africa. I've got 91 clients in the UK and about 58 odd clients in the US. So we have many, many different perspectives across sector and across industry. If you're in your business and you are alone, or you're with a partner, or you're stuck in a family, the perspectives you have are very limited to groupthink and that business in its own self. This is where you ought to be reaching out and getting some perspective more than anything else. That's what I hope to achieve through these webinars. We're going to be talking a lot about mindset in future webinars because I think we're going to go through ups and downs over the 3-week period. We've spoken already a lot about tactics, and we're going to continue to talk about tactics as we see which industries are impacted and which ones aren't. Yes, of course, we're going to talk around government and corporate. There will be a lot of content around housekeeping. I'm very, very interested in understanding what we as business owners can do, isolated from our teams, over the next 3 weeks. The one thing that I think will be critical is about getting into a habit for the next 3 weeks very fast. Stumbling out of bed in your pajamas, having breakfast with your partner or family or alone, whatever the case might be, and sauntering over to the laptop, because that's going to be the method of engaging with your team, is not a habit. I'm talking about strict discipline. In fact, if I were you, and perhaps this was what the next webinar should be like, how do you develop a boot camp for yourself over the next 3 weeks? By definition, boot camps are very disciplined processes, where day 1 and day 2 and day 3, day 4, day 5 are well thought out with routines in order to take advantage of the one thing we always ask for when we are running full steam in our businesses, and that is time. Please don't spend the time, invest the time. Invest it to be sure that you get to the other side, but more importantly, that you're locked and loaded for growth once you do get there in 3 weeks to 3 months from now. We'll go weekly. I'm garnering a lot of ideas. I'm seeing a lot of things. I'm speaking to a lot of people. Last week, I spoke to over 150 business owners after the announcement was made around social distancing. This week, I'm terribly sorry, but I switched off my phone by Tuesday. It was simply too much. But through those conversations, I learn as much as they might learn in the conversations that I have with them. And it's all those learnings that I would like to put on the table and offer right across the board to business owners, with one caveat. It'll only be useful and valuable if you do have a medium to long-term strategy in your business, because the only voice I can speak from is an asset of value voice. In ending off, I want to share a resource, a set of, how cool is that picture? I want to share a set of resources to help you through this next 3-week period and the 3-month period that lies beyond it. They're all available at auric.com. And the first thing will be a recording of this webinar. If you have found it helpful, if you have found it useful, you're absolutely welcome to share it. Bear in mind that you've got customers and you've got suppliers, and their well-being is as good as your well-being. In fact, if your supply chain and demand chain are equally healthy, the likelihood of you getting through to the other side is significantly higher. The next thing is, I've got a letter to SARS, a template that you can use to engage with SARS and prepare for your negotiation. It's a letter that's generally written. It has feeling in it, and it also has technical head in it. It's there to elicit a human response, but also an intelligent business argument. There are a couple of aspects to it. In the early stages, the introduction to the letter, I give you all the provisions that SARS has made for us to work through the COVID-19 period. Plus, I've also given you all the contact details that you need in order to identify who you must send the letter to engage with. After that, I go into the meat of the letter. There are a number of paragraphs, and each of them are preceded by blue italic paragraphs explaining why I wrote the paragraph, and should you choose to use it, how you can use it to your advantage, and what you ought to change in the paragraph itself. The letter itself is about 1.5 pages, because a lot of it is going to include your calculations, the 3-month forecast and the 12-month forecast, in order to argue the deferment on either VAT or PAYE. There are all the previous webinars. You're free to use them, you're free to watch them. I personally watch all my webinars on a 1.25 speed. Typically, when you deliver in Word, it's very different to hearing and seeing, because you hear and see with your brain about 20 to 50% faster than somebody can talk. There will be a calendar of future webinars. I think next week, by the looks of it, based on demand, we're going to talk about how you work with your team and possibly how you work with your bank. I see most banks have already come forward, which I was very pleased to see, with opportunities and concessions over this 1-month period that lies ahead of us. It might not be enough, so we'll probably explore how to look beyond just what's being offered. And finally, from there, please respond. I will send you all of this in any event on email. Please respond and let me know what your thoughts are. Tell me what else is troubling you. Tell me what else you would like to have me cover. And if I'm able to, and I think I can give you practical, useful insights based on our experience as an organization and all the businesses we work with, I will certainly craft a webinar around it for that purpose. I don't want to keep you much longer. I said it would be 40 minutes. It's 45 minutes over. I'm getting better at this. I tend to talk a lot. But I really hope that you found this useful. I hope you found it practical. And I hope you put it to good use. Please, please don't sit and do nothing over the period. Go read that book. Because a lot of what I'm sharing with you will come out of that book, but in very, very practical terms. Incidentally, it will be available from the 1st of April on Audible, and I'm very excited about that. But please don't sit back and do nothing. There is no such thing as fate. We make our own fate. And acting will tell you the direction you need to follow. Because in action, you find your truth. I know it can be scary for some of you, but the moment you act, you empower yourself positively. And when you act, follow the path that works. If it doesn't work after 1 or 2 events, finish it there and try something different. And with that, I thank you very much for joining me and hope to see you at the next webinar. I'll say cheers from here.